Hi, folks. Craig DeRoche, President and CEO of Family Policy Alliance. I'm here with Brittany Jones of Kansas Family Voice. Brittany, she was just on a week ago. We talked about the possibility, Brittany, of what we're celebrating now today. Something happened in Kansas. Brittany is the Director of Public Policy. I'm getting that wrong. You give your title the right way. For Kansas Family Voice. Kansas became our 24th state protecting kids. Civil rights, folks. This is my opinion, and these are my words. I'm going to introduce Brittany and let her go here a little bit. But whatever happened to protecting kids and letting them have a childhood, Brittany? We don't let them smoke cigarettes or buy alcohol or join the military, kill people, all sorts of stuff. But apparently, these groomers, these people that wanted to prepare them to go to sex parties when they're 18, want all of this stuff in the schools. They want the weird LGBT, all this crazy is come through the last 10 years, and states started fighting back. Family Policy Alliance launched this in 2017. You were here with the launch, correct? You've been here the whole time.
The whole time.
The public told us that we're a solution in search of a problem. And yet this swung an entire presidential election. $250 million spent on it, and it polls 80 to 20%. Probably more decisive than capitalism versus communism. Wouldn't do that well in America polling. Brittany Jones is with us from Kansas Family Voice. What happened in Kansas yesterday to protect kids?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Thank you for having me. Thanks for inviting me back to talk about the amazing victory that we had in Kansas just yesterday, not even 24 hours ago. Both chambers of the Kansas legislature overrode the governor's veto of our Help Not Harm Act, making us the 24th state to protect kids from radical gender ideology through the use of cross-sex hormones, puberty blockers, and surgeries that were cutting off healthy body parts.
It's crazy. Now, to orient people, you use some words there, and I want everybody to understand. We're talking about surgery, and she said removing healthy body parts. So these are healthy kids under the age of 18. These are minors, and they are healthy. They don't have to go to the doctor every week and every month, but the doctors are going to give them a chronic disease that they'll need treatment from until they die. God willing, of natural causes at a ripe old age of over 100 years old. On Social Security, right? Brittany, we'll have a little bit of fun here. But the truth of the matter is this was all a lie, wasn't it? And you guys have been trying for 3 years in Kansas to reveal that. Tell everybody about this is your third time at bat here, and you got it all the way through. Tell everybody about how hard it is to protect kids in America. That's what everybody's head. My wife didn't even think that this stuff was really happening, Brittany. She thought that this was just stuff that politicians were talking. She didn't know that thousands and thousands of kids and their parents are being misled by that. And you've been trying for 3 years in Kansas to get people to pay attention to it. What happened the last 2 years?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. Like, you talk to Kansans on the street, you talk to most Americans on the street. There's no way this stuff is happening. Oh, if it's happening, it's an adult. It's no big deal. It's not happening to kids. And that's where we started 3 years ago. At Family Policy Alliance, we've been talking about this bill for almost a decade now, right?
Yeah.
And especially back then, no one really believed it was happening. But even 3 years ago, Chloe Cole and Prisha came in, and they were telling people that this had happened to them, that they had been put on this conveyor belt to be transitioned at the age of 13 and 14. And social media played into it. And all of these doctors and medical professionals who are supposed to be helping them were telling their parents that if they didn't get these procedures, that, they were going to commit suicide. And so it was, would you rather have a live son or a dead daughter? That was the sort of language that was being used to manipulate them and their parents into this conveyor belt of being medicalized for the rest of their lives. And so, that's the conversation we were having 3 years ago. And if you don't know, Kansas has a Democratic governor who's radically LGBTQ. She is in the pocket of that movement and of those activists. And so she vetoed this bill 3 times, just like she vetoed the Fairness Women's Sports Act 3 times. And on the 3rd time, we were finally able to override. Last year, we got really close to an override. And then at the last minute, 2 Republicans peeled off, wouldn't tell us why, wouldn't give us a good reason, kind of made up a reason. And that wasn't actually there. But they were being pushed along by some local hospitals who didn't want to lose their funding. And you know what? We found out that those hospitals were the largest profiters off of doing these procedures on minors. So no wonder they didn't want the money to stop flowing.
And it's just disgusting. Wow. Jumping. In Kansas, Democratic governor. This is not a partisan issue, by the way. These are bipartisan votes. All 6 votes you just talked about were bipartisan, right? There's
No,
three. Oh,
the
some
last
were
one,
partisan.
but the first ones weren't. Yeah.
The first ones were. It was this one bipartisan.
This one, that the override was not, because the one Democrat who had voted for it flipped off at the last minute, but it had been a bipartisan up to that point.
So it got to the governor bipartisan. So, folks, what I'm trying to say here is, in Kansas Family Voice is an extraordinary organization, folks. If you live in Kansas, you want to support them, you want to be a member of Kansas Family Voice. It's how we do our work, by the way. We have 40 state organizations, and we want you to be involved with your state organization first, because we believe politics is best affected where you live. For your local community, that's where we want you to get involved. And we want you to get involved with your Family Policy Council. And people that are listening to this, some people will be new, and they'll have this shared with them, Brittany. They'll say, so what? Who cares? I join enough things. I give everybody $10 a month or $100 a month. What are you guys going to do for me? But the truth is, Brittany, you guys are the ones in Virginia. Victoria Cobb, your peer there, the Family Foundation, were the ones that called out McAuliffe when he said that teachers know better than parents what to teach their kids in 2021, and boys should go in the girls' bathroom. And that was an FPC, like you guys. 23 other states have protected children from these radical permanent surgeries. Now 24 because of the Family Policy Council. So, folks, if you're out there, if you're wondering what's going on in America, you're wondering about this 70-year sex, whatever you want to call it, weird thing that's been inflicted on all of our families and all of our kids, who's fighting back? It's the Family Policy Councils. That's who you want to be affiliated with, and they're really good at this. So we have passed this now. Brittany was on the team when they crafted the original legislation, and here you are, the most recent person. I've been told 99% of this was you whacking moles over there at the state house and everything. But thousands and thousands of kids have been saved. When does this go into effect in Kansas? When will the kids actually start to be saved? Is that next year or is that sooner?
No. So the way we wrote the bill, the minute they signed it, which was last night, it went into effect. So now across the state of Kansas, they have to publish it in the books. But, once that happens in a couple of weeks, it will be illegal to perform these procedures on children. You face losing your license. You face being sued. And so, in Kansas, you are not going to be able to perform these things on kids, which is a huge victory. And to your point about bipartisanship, it is actually bipartisan when you talk to real people, right? Like, it gets real partisan in the building, but when you talk to real people, we've got legislators who have told us that they have transgender constituents who are voting for the Republicans because they think the Democrats have gone too far. They're Democrats in other respects, but when it comes to these issues, they agree with the largely Republican caucus that says that kids need to be protected from these procedures and from this ideology.
Well, it's such a blessing that we have Kansas Family Voice, and that we have legislators. Were there statesmen involved in this too? Brittany, tell us about how that works with Family Policy Councils and Family Policy Alliance.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of the alliance, right? Like, we all across the country get to work together to trade ideas, to learn from each other, to share information, to encourage each other when it gets rough. Because I can tell you, being in the state, sometimes you feel real alone, right? Like, it can be very isolating. There's a lot of days where I need my brothers and sisters from the FPC movement across the country to remind me why I'm doing this. And so that's a beautiful part of it. But another amazing part is our Statesman Academy alum. We've got, I think, 12 that are still currently in the state house. One of them is the majority leader in the Kansas House. You've got, leaders. The original bill that was introduced by Representative Susan Humphreys back in 2022. And she is one of the original statesmen. The director of the Catholic conference out here that helped us out as well is one of the original members of the Statesman Academy back when it first started. So it's a group of legislators who think alike, who've been trained in similar ways, who are working alongside us to get these bills through the legislature. And so it has been so cool to see how that has all worked together. There's been amazing leadership in both chambers who've worked together to push this forward and make it the number one priority for the year.
Well, Brittany, you've been a part of this movement and you've been through the dark and the lonely days. And it is lonely being in a state, and it dark and lonely and hard. And people, if they don't even know that these radical, weird surgeries are going on and it's damaging permanently thousands of kids, unfortunately, you can mask that in a country as big as America. But we're on to them now. President Trump is on to them. He's issuing executive orders to support protecting the civil rights of our children, not to be sexualized before they're old enough to discern what the adult is doing with them, trying to persuade them of these radical, weird sexual things. Folks, there's not a reason why an adult, other than a parent of a child, needs to be talking to them about sex before they're 18 years old. There's not a good and healthy reason other than your doctor or your personal doctor or your parents. If the idea that our culture, our country, our TV shows, our teachers are qualified to teach performance art of sex is going to be one of these things, Brittany, that people look back on 50 years from now and say, if you didn't think cops would be good at mental health when you gave them that job, what made you think that giving public school teachers the job of teaching sexual performance art was going to lead to a healthier culture, right? And I think we'll look back on the stupidity of this in the future. But what we're trying to do, folks, and I'm trying to be serious here in this segment, is that you create an opportunity for us to do something much larger than protect kids that are being affected and attracted to this radical LGBTQ ideology. There's a thing in America, just like there's in every society, called like a pendulum, where things swing one way and then they swing the other. And in our culture, we've swung away from what Dan Quayle got mercilessly made fun of for calling family values, because he was talking about pornography in the 80s. And he said, this is a root thing. It's going to lead people away from their families. It's going to lead people away from their relationships, and it's going to hurt America. And people on the Republicans and Democrats made fun of him, Brittany. And now you flash forward 40 years and people are saying, you know what? Pornography is probably the root of all of this. And it's manifested itself out in this LGBTQ stuff and these other weird sex stuff and all these other things. And we're getting back to it. But folks, none of this would have been possible in our great nation if you did not support organizations like Kansas Family Voice. So if you're listening to this now and you're saying, wait a second, I know what happened. I saw the ads. I'm so excited that our president and these states are doing the right thing, but I don't know where it came from. That's what this show's about, Brittany. We're now starting to talk. Brittany, you know this. I'm going to have you recount some of this with your colleagues. We're the movement that was firebombed on Mother's Day in Wisconsin. You remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
They firebombed our shop there. They harass you. You want to share an anecdote or a story about what you guys have had to endure down there in Kansas?
Yes.
Thinking we got kicked out of a CRM, told you that you couldn't do business with them.
Couldn't find insurance for forever.
Find insurance.
Yeah. I mean, even just yesterday, as I was walking out of the chamber, well, I wasn't walking out of the chamber, I was standing outside the chamber. One of the legislators who claims, who's gay, walks up behind me and yells in my ear, "Crap," and then just walks away. And that happens regularly. Like, they glare at me, they make fun of us. I get death threats quite regularly. Like, that is somewhat a part of the job, and it tells me that to some extent we're headed on the right path. But yeah, it is. This is a regular part of the job, and I don't think a lot of families realize that that's what's happening. And they want, and it's so hard for families to speak up often because they believe in this stuff. They are with us, but most conservatives, most Christians, they just want the freedom to take their kids to soccer practice, take their kids to school. They don't want to have to talk about these hard issues. And so that's where we get to step in, encourage them to speak up and to speak about these hard issues. But also, I'm willing to take the name calling if that means that most families can live their lives.
Well, you're a hero to me, Brittany. That's why I wanted to talk to you today on it, because you do stand up for a lot and to a lot and for a lot of the right reasons. I've talked to you before. You've heard me speak, that I did a lot of work in justice. I from Detroit. So a lot of civil rights remnant work. I recognized this movement instantly when I started working here in 2020. And I was saying the only difference between like Riley Gaines and Rosa Parks is Rosa just got there first.
Mhm.
Riley actually worked for 22 years for her seat on the bus and earned it, right? But men have had this weird relationship with women since the garden, and women have fought so hard for their civil rights. Our children, folks, the devil has our country by the throat when abusive children can be papered over with advertising dollars from local hospitals in newspapers and dismissed as nothing. But Kansas Family Voice, the family policy councils, the Family Policy Alliance, that the movement that we lead have said, you know what, that we're not going to stand for that in 2017. Everybody counts or no one's going to count. Just like Rosa Parks' right to sit in that seat mattered, or a black person to sit at a diner seat, a woman's right to walk into a bathroom and enjoy her privacy and her safety is her constitutional civil right. For a child not to have their teachers, their coaches, their pastors, their police officers, other people sexualizing them and calling it education is what America is supposed to be. And Americans know this, Brittany. 80% of Americans know this, but it's so confounding right now, the partisanship and the marketing. It took you 3 years to override this governor, but this is a hopeful show. So I'm reminding everybody, and we're celebrating a little bit here, Brittany. You did this, folks. You did this, but it's hard work. And that got us to 24, Brittany. So that means everybody else that's as good at math as me is how many states we have left in America. We have 26, and we have Washington, D.C. that we have to go. So the reason why we're doing this show is it's just beginning. But folks, this is an issue that was a 50-50 issue when we started in 2017. People like Elise Stefanik, when she was in Congress, voted with the radical LGBTQ to make trans the permanent policy of America. So did a lot of these other so-called conservatives in Congress. But now it's an 80-20% issue because of the work for you. When you get involved and you say, well, it doesn't matter when I get involved in my local church. It does. 50,000 churches work with the family policy councils like the Kansas Family Voice. It doesn't matter if I support the organization. It does. Brittany, you beat this governor yesterday. What was the score? Tell everybody what the score was in the House and the Senate.
Yeah, so it was 31-9 in the Senate and 85 with 2 Republicans missing to 34 in the House. And so we need 84 and 27. And so we had a little bit of cushion in both chambers. But to your point, like, we absolutely cannot do this without supporters who give to us monthly, who pray for us, who take action and contact their legislators. Yes, I've developed some good relationships and I'm decent at my job, presumably, right? But it is the power of the people behind me that really changed things in the building, because they know that I'm backed up by 30,000 Kansans and probably more, right? And it's because they're hearing from their constituents. It's because, all of these things, and they saw the polling, right? They saw that this was an 80-20 issue, and that changed things because both, the last couple of years, probably 3 years ago, when we bring this topic up, people are like, oh, I don't know about that. I have to run for election, so I'm not sure if we should bring that up. Now they're asking for it. They want to run it the first thing because you guys have changed that.
Well, this has been transformative. It's been a transformative year, folks, and this can be transformative for America. So, Brittany, thank you for being with us. Thank you for celebrating this victory for us. But folks, we want to remind you, Brittany and I are both on here because we work with an organization called Christians Engaged as well. Both of us do. And the idea is that we want you, if you're listening to this show, to vote in every election. If you live in Kansas or you live in Michigan and they're going to vote on the width of the sidewalk, something you normally don't care about, we want you to vote if you're a Christian. We want you to pray first. We want you to vote. We want you to engage every single Christian in every single election. Because, folks, that is the transformation that America needs right now. We're heading into, Brittany, I just saw an article this morning from our friend and our colleague, Bunny Pounds, talking about the revival with Generation Z, filling up the churches because of all the secularism didn't work for them. They're looking for answers. Our rising generation is returning to the Lord. Our politics, our cultural swing is shifting back to where 80, 20% for support for our positions, the positions of the word, of the truth and the way against this gender ideology. The same is happening with people searching out their faith, Brittany. So we believe we're at the beginning of something, not at the end of something here. What do you think about that?
Yeah, this day would not be possible without the election in 2024, right?
Yeah.
There were people in this building who would not vote for it before, and they're not here anymore, either because they self-selected out or they got voted out. And we worked very hard to change some of those. And so, yes, we're going to celebrate the electoral victory as well as the legislative victory, because those all go together. But I think there's a bigger victory happening. I'm seeing young people my age and younger, their hearts being turned back to the Lord, their hearts being turned back to the church and to their families. And I think that is what's going to change the culture, and that's what's going to truly create lasting change in our country and in our state.
Well, that's where my hope is too, Brittany. And for those of you that are home that are thinking that's pie in the sky, it is not. It is not. America has reconciled and returned to traditional values multiple times. The biggest one was after the Civil War, where we enjoyed decades of social conservative unity in Washington, D.C., decades of it, after people, for a moment, led with the idea that every human being was created in God's image until we stopped doing that with abortion and with other things like that. But folks, the true north that we're fighting for. Yeah. Go ahead. No, you were going to say something.
No, we have short memories, right? Like the Lord works, but it takes every single generation passing on those values, passing on truth, pointing their kids to having kids and pointing those kids to Jesus in order to keep the momentum going.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we want you to do. So, folks, if you're listening to the show, if you've got some wind in your sails from what President Trump's been leading with the national work and from what you're hearing, what is possible in Kansas, folks, those stunning numbers, 85 to 50, things like that. That's what it looks like in the 90s when people finally heard, oh, wait, it's not dignified to live on welfare your whole life. It's dignified to get help to get back to work, right? And when America finally heard that, it settled the issue for decades, and people on the right and left came together. We don't want to sexualize our kids. It's a simple message. We don't think that kids, parents, adults should have the business of sexualizing kids until they turn 18. Bad things happen. We've seen it with Epstein and Diddy and everybody else in the world that tries it. We're the ones that have been trying to protect our kids' civil rights to that childhood. If you want to or are inclined to join that movement right now, this is the time to change America for the better. We need you. Join us. Click on the button now. Join Kansas Family Voice. Join the Family Policy Council where you live and help us vote in every single election. Tell everybody that I'm not telling you an issue or a candidate to vote for. I'm telling you if you pray and you vote and you engage, all of the Christians, that transformation will happen. That's what occurred when all 7 swing states, we reached out, Brittany, you helped us do this, and the 12 million voters. You helped us with that in Kansas and Michigan and all these other states. You did this, folks. This is our opportunity. We're on the rise, and let's just take it from here, Brittany. What can we be doing for you? What can we be praying for as we go out from this? Give us some encouragement.
We're not done in Kansas yet, right? So this is a huge win, trying to celebrate the victory of Help Not Harm. But today we've got 2 more bills around protecting kids, around protecting religious freedom in the Kansas House and Senate. So we're praying for those debates and those votes today, and get engaged because there's a lot more work to do in Kansas and around the country.
Amen. Thank you, Brittany. Thank you for being with us. I'm Craig DeRoche, CEO, Family Policy Alliance. Folks, check out the links. We need you. Vote in every election 4 times every 1 year. In most states, not 1 time every 4 years. Take control of this. You are Caesar. You own the country. You own your state. You own your city and your school district. Start acting like it. Join us, and blessings to you. Thank you.
Thank you.